Hi everybody, welcome back to Acended Masters 101. This is where we talk all about the teachings of the Acended Masters, and in this video we are going to interview students of the Acended Masters, a good group, friends of mine, all ages, lots of different backgrounds, nationalities, ethnic origins, you name it, about how they found the teachings of the Acended Masters. And the reason I wanted to ask them this question is because a lot of times the angels, the Ascended Masters work really hard to coordinate the finding of the teachings. It's actually like a big experience in a soul's life to again make that contact in their outer awareness with the teachings, with the guru, with the Ascended Masters, with the spiritual hierarchy, with the lineage that we come from spiritually. A lot of us just kind of wander through life having no idea that this spiritual hierarchy, this lineage, is something that we come from. We have a spiritual lineage that we come from, and it's much greater than our family tree, right? Of just our relatives that we are the descendants of, but we are actually part of a huge spiritual family. And we have gurus, we have Ascended Masters, we have spiritual teachers who go before us and who have laid the way for us and who are teaching us and beckoning us and being that resource, that spiritual help to us that we may not even know about. And so it's a big moment in someone's life when they reconnect with that awareness in their outer consciousness, which kind of means like in your waking awareness, right? We often, attend spiritual retreats of the Ascended Masters while our bodies are sleeping. And so that higher awareness of ourselves knows about the Ascended Masters. We're attending their retreats. We are learning, we are growing, we are doing so many things. But then when we wake up in the morning or when, our lifetime begins, there's a veil that comes down, the veil of forgetfulness. And the outer part of our mind forgets. And so, a lot of us have a sense in our hearts that there's more to life. There has to be more to life than streets and stoplights and shopping malls and a job, and these are all wonderful things, family and children and beautiful things that we love. But I think a lot of people feel like there's something missing in their spiritual life, in their spiritual evolution, their spiritual growth. And so when people find the teachings of the Ascended Masters, again, like I said, it's that important reconnection of their conscious awareness of the teachings. And I remember reading in one of the books of the Ascended Masters that, and I'm just paraphrasing from memory, but it's that souls will attend the retreats, the spiritual retreats of the Ascended Masters in their finer bodies while their physical bodies sleep at night, and they are waiting. They are just waiting for the teachings of the Ascended Masters to either be translated into their language or for them to come across these teachings in their waking consciousness. So then they can set their foot upon the path and begin their spiritual progress in their outer waking awareness in earnest. And so it's a big gift to anyone to find these teachings. It really is. And so how they find these teachings is often a really cool story. How the angels of coordination, the Ascended Masters, have worked so hard to help them make that connection. And so I was hoping to gather some of these stories and have the opportunity to share them with you together with friends of mine about their experience. And so that's what this video is all about. All stories about how they found these teachings. And if you'd like to share with all of us in the comments below how you found the teachings of the Ascended Masters, I would love to hear them. I love reading these stories. I know that it's such a boon to the soul, really, to find these teachings that I just get goosebumps every time I hear these stories. And so I loved hearing these stories. As I was filming, I was just got the chills up and down so often as I was listening to them to share, sharing their witness with me and with all of us. And so again, many thanks to these lovely people for opening up, for sharing their stories with all of us. And I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. So let's get started. How did you find the teachings of the Ascended Masters is the question of this video.
I've been a spiritual seeker since high school. I was reading books, going to churches in California. There's a lot of different ones, I can assure you. Read and read and read. Then I found reincarnation. I was so excited about this because it answered so many of my questions. When I was in school, I went to a library one day and looked up in the esoteric and New Age movement, and there was a book there called The I Am Discourses. And it seemed like it jumped off the shelf to me. I didn't know what it was. I took it home, I read it. I even have a picture where I put it on the grass and studied it between classes. This is something I didn't know what it was. But that led me to a bookstore, and that bookstore had the actual books of the Ascended Masters that Summit Lighthouse publishes. And they told me there was going to be a conference with Mark Prophet, who is Mrs. Prophet's husband, and Mrs. Prophet giving it. And so I went to there, got to meet them, was introduced to the Ascended Masters, and I knew this is real. And so that's been the pursuit that's taken me many years and many great experiences.
I first heard about the Ascended Masters through a friend. She mentioned Saint Germain. She was going through some cancer treatments and she heard about the violet flame and she was giving this prayer: I am a being of violet fire, I am the purity God desires, regularly. And then another friend later on found out how interested I was in beloved Kuan Yin, and she said that, well, there's a church out in Chicago you should probably visit because they talk about these ascended masters. And then I ended up working with someone at a job later on who ended up who was a part of that church community, and in our casual conversation at work, somehow I started talking about Sanat Kumara, which is an ascended master from the planet Venus who came to Earth eons and eons ago. There was no light on Earth, and he didn't want it to be destroyed. And he and 144,000 souls from Venus came to Earth to help mitigate the catastrophe that would have ensued because there was no light. And anyway, talking about this particular ascended master led this particular person at my job to share what church she was going to. And I started uh, going with her. And it's been wonderful ever since. I've been going to that church and learning about the Ascended Master teachings.
I was raised in the teachings of the Ascended Masters by very loving and devoted parents, although I didn't actually choose the path for myself as an adult until my mid 20s, and that's when I became a keeper of the flame.
A friend invited me and my daughter to a lecture on the Fatima prophecy. And at the end of the allotted time for that lecture, the man who was in charge said, I've made a miscalculation and we're going to have to finish the lecture next week. So we returned the following week. And at the end of that allotted time, the hour and a half, however long it was, he said again the same thing. I've miscalculated the time and we'll have to complete this next week. So by the third time coming back uh, for the lecture on the Fatima prophecy, by that time we had really gotten interested in the teachings. And uh, my daughter was 11 years old at the time. And within days after that third session, we learned that she had a brain tumor. And that just propelled us into the teachings. It helped us, focus on it a lot.
When I attended a seminar about angels, and they weren't talking about angels, they were actually talking about the chart of the I Am Presence. And as soon as I saw that chart and the picture of the I Am Presence, I knew that this was the path for me. It really keyed to something in my heart, and it allowed me the opportunity to lay everything down and begin with this path. And it was a really tremendous experience and very, very transformative.
I found the teachings in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where the Tetons are. And it was fun to find out that students of the Ascended Masters really liked the Tetons and thought they were kind of special. But I was studying Edgar Casey and Course of Miracles and things like that. And then I found Acended Master University in Hawaii. And I just dropped everything, gave up my living space, turned my business over to someone to run for a while, and I was bought a ticket for Hawaii. And about a week before I was to leave, they called me and said, "We're sorry to tell you the school has closed and it will not be reopening." And I was stunned. So I got a little bit assertive and I said, "Well, you have to tell me what books you're going to study then if I can't come there and do it with you. What were you going to read? I know you're going to read something." And the guy says, "Well, all right. Anything written by Elizabeth Clare Prophet." And I said, "Thanks, I'll do that." So I went to the local bookstore, and sure enough, they had three of them: The Sheila on the Path, Dossier on the Ascension, and Climb the Highest Mountain. And I read all three. And as I was finished the last one, this little card falls out of the book and it says, "Would you like to go to Summit University?" It's like, yes, that's what I would like to do. So I packed up and went to Camelot. And so my first introduction to the teachings really was, besides those books, was Winter Quarter, 1985 in Camelot.
I attended a lecture in Vancouver, Canada, that was given by a minister of our church. And at that lecture, we were giving some decrees, and I had a very profound experience that I feel changed me forever.
I was working in an organic food distribution company in Amsterdam in Holland. And the short story is several of the individuals that worked there had already found the teachings, and I found them. And that's how it happened. But I've known during that time for about 3 months that I was going to find something. Didn't know what it was going to be, but it ended up being the teachings of the Ascended Masters. It was very, very exciting.
In 1976, a friend of mine was going to a conference in Washington, D.C., and I was very patriotic. So I was interested in going to Washington, D.C. at that time to celebrate the bicentennial. And she was going to a spiritual conference. And I was really on a spiritual path at that time looking for something. And I asked her about the group. She said she didn't know much about the group, but they had secret lessons, which really intrigued me because I really liked mysteries and breaking codes. Of course, I found out later the secret lessons were the Keeper of the Flame lessons. So I went to the conference. I found out about the school that they were opening in Pasadena called Montessori International, and I was a teacher and I knew I was supposed to teach at that school. So I went home and I broke my contract with my teaching job and broke the contract with my apartment and went out to California from St. Louis. And there was no turning back after that. I became a lifelong Sheila on the path of the Ascended Masters after that experience in Washington, D.C.
In a book, The Great White Brotherhood in the Culture, History, and Religion of America.
I found the teachings of the Ascended Masters at a health food store in Colorado Springs called the Four Winds Organic Center. And I wandered in there thinking that I was needing to buy vitamins. Needless to say, I got more than vitamins. I met Mark Prophet. I met Mother, his wife, Elizabeth. I called her Elizabeth for a long time. Then I called her Mother. And now, of course, she's Goober Ma. And Mark is now Lanello. So that's where I found it. The angels just guided me to a health food store, and the rest is history.
Finding the teachings of the Ascended Masters was a journey from my childhood because I grew up in the summertime along the shores of the Sacramento River, right near Mount Shasta. And Mount Shasta was where there were many stories about the Master Saint Germain and the Lemurians. And my mother would take me to hear these stories and these plays that were put on at the base of the mountain. So I was searching for Saint Germain. I'd heard about him as a child. I felt unsettled in high school and college because I didn't really fit in. Just kept searching and searching. And even in college, I read a lot of spiritual teachings. And I finally found the Master Yogananda. I went and studied in Latin America looking for the Brotherhood. And it wasn't until I came back from that odyssey and that journey that I actually met friends who were actually studying the Ascended Master Teachings and were headed to a conference at Mount Shasta. And I thought, this is interesting. So I pursued that and I pursued talking more and reading more. But it was really when I went to graduate school and I went into a bookstore And there was a book there that pretty much jumped off the shelf, and it was called My Soul Doth Magnify the Lord. And in downtown Denver, I just bought that book and I opened it up and read the first pages, and I just knew this was the story of my soul that I needed to learn about. So that's how I found the teachings of the Ascended Masters.
So I had a friend, she was going to meet me for lunch. And in her way to the restaurant, she saw the book Saint Germain on Alchemy in a bookstore window. And I felt she had to buy this book for me. And then she bought it and put it in front of me and said, "That's for you." And that's how it happened. She never heard about the book.
I found the teachings at a point in my life when I was at a very low ebb. I had pretty much hit rock bottom. In fact, it was so bad that I actually went to church and prayed, which I just didn't do at the time. And then I started doing some general reading about positive thinking. I came across one of Mother's books, and there was no looking back after that. I was just gripped by it instantly.